All right, thank you guys for coming officially to my Hilltop presentation. When I was thinking of what I would do and study for a whole year, a lot of things came to my mind. I had lots of big interests, and the whole point of this is to be very big picture, and I couldn't think of a bigger picture than this. So, a wicked problem is a social or cultural problem that is difficult or impossible to solve for three main reasons. Incomplete or contradictory knowledge, the number of people or opinions that are involved with it, and then a large economic burden. When you first think of this, when you first look this term up, it's not the homeless problem in LA, the coronavirus pandemic, or the fact that we have to rebuild every sports team in Chicago. The first thing that pops up is the massive problem of conserving the earth. It's a problem that sits on the top of every major problem in the world right now, and it has a lot of people question, is it too late? Is the conservation of earth a lost cause? And we do have cause to believe that. This is a clock in New York City that's reading the how much time we have left on the earth. And there's a lot of things like this, like the midnight clock, and we only have a second left. It's super, super concerning, but kind of my goal with this was to kind of learn, is it too late? Is it worth trying to save? And luckily there are a lot of big shoulders to step on when it comes to researching this problem. One of the biggest resources I found at a program last year is this thing called Project Drawdown. So Project Drawdown was created by this conservationist named Paul Hawken. He's a very, very successful author and conservationist. He's world-renowned in that aspect. And the term drawdown is, in respects to climate change, is the point in time where greenhouse gases reduce from their highest peak. So each year there's a time where it dips, and then there's a time where it increases. Obviously, with the way the world is working now, each year we are not reaching the levels of what we were reaching the previous year. So before humans, it's thought that each year you keep going down at the same pace so that you would be constant in the amount of greenhouse gases like CO2 that are in our atmosphere. And if you guys aren't aware, the CO2 and like gases like methane and other greenhouse gases, they basically destroy the ozone. And one of the biggest threats to our Earth is climate change from global warming, from the lack of protection that the ozone offers, and we're making big holes in that atmosphere. And basically what they've learned is that through NASA's, that's one of the satellites they have, but they're tracking fluorescent lights from photosynthesis, and that's how they're tracking the amount of CO2 that's being brought down back to Earth. And each year it's about 6 to 7 parts per million that we're bringing down, but like I said, it's building up, and now we have an excess. Kind of the way they thought of this, it's kind of seen as the most robust and effective plan to reverse global warming. It's a book, it's a massive website, and it's a huge initiative, global initiative now. They have over 200 top scientists and researchers who are basically helping to devise solutions for climate change and global warming. And that really is just the goal of Project Drawdown, to inform and to give an actual plan of how we can reverse global warming. So like I started saying in the beginning about a wicked problem, there are still solutions. There is a lot of hope when it comes to reversing global warming. So I'd like to ask you guys, this is measured in the gigatons of CO2 that will be saved or brought back down to Earth. How much of that do you guys think is energy? Of the top 20 solutions, and they have around 100, how many do you guys think are energy involved? You guys can raise your hands.
Can you, I'm not sure I understand the question.
So, I'll give you an example, like solar energy, wind energy, like renewable energy sources.
Yeah.
How many do you guys think are on the top 20 solutions to reverse global warming?
Oh, I see.
I would guess about half.
Half? Mr. Cozy, half?
Unfair.
So when I was working on this project learning about this last year, I guessed majority of the top 20 would be energy. It's actually just 5. Wind turbines, solar farms, rooftop solar energy, geothermal energy, and nuclear energy. If you can see, this was very surprising to me, refrigerant management. So refrigeration kind of leaves it, it like gives off this chemical that's kind of worse than CO2 for the environment, and it's a huge problem now, especially with the amount of food that we're eating and that we're storing. I was very surprised by that, but a lot of them are things that we can do. So if you number 3 is reduce food waste. Number 4 is a plant-rich diet, and I'm not saying go vegan. It's more of like 75% of your meal will be veggies, and by doing that, you're reducing the use of agriculture, the use of like all the cows that are in those pastures. I remember 3 weeks ago when I was visiting schools in California, I was driving down from San Francisco to LA. The whole road, for miles, all you saw was avocados, like almond plant. It's just covered vineyards, and that land used to be trees and all that stuff. Now it's super dry and just crops. And obviously, as a high schooler, I can't address any of these problems right now. And the way that I kind of looked at it now is that the one thing I can control is kind of learning from the people who will inherit the earth in the future. Before I get to that, kind of addressing the biggest part of people's complaints about moving to a more sustainable country is, oh, it's going to cost too much. To do the 100 solutions that they've proposed, and this is just the U.S., but it would cost $29 trillion initially. That's to solve that's to implement all 100 solutions. But they're estimating to save $74 trillion for a net profit of $45 trillion. So we will be saving that much money in the future. And obviously things like electric vehicles will cost more initially, but once more people are into it, it will be a lot cheaper. I kind of like to think of this quote, the greatest threat to our planet is the belief that someone else will save it. To me, that's meant a lot. I've kind of been very motivated by the outdoors in my life, from my parents to my grandparents. It's been a huge part of my life. And kind of the way I've looked at my Hilltop is that kind of before you can learn to love, like to care for something, you gotta learn how to love it. I can't ask you to care for the ocean when you live in Illinois. I can't ask you to care for the forest in Amazon if you live in Illinois. And that's really my goal with my Hilltop. So this is just a picture of me. This was basically my childhood. I've been very lucky, but this is kind of what made me get on the path that I am today. A lot of exploring and learning from the outdoors. So obviously I did start this project in junior year, where I would work with Miss Moon's class, the second grade class. I was very connected with them. I had Zaid, who was a first grader, and I worked with him with Big Brother, Big Sister. And I got very close to their grade, and when I wanted to do this last year, I was like, it's the perfect people to do it. They already know me. They were already comfortable with me. And then Mr. Warsi does a lot for, like, he's very involved when it comes to things like this, so it was just the perfect next step, as well as me already knowing the children. So this was kind of our schedule this year. Obviously, I would have loved to do it all year, but with the trimester system, it actually worked pretty well. The main issue I had last year and why I made this a Hilltop, before it was really just a volunteer project for me, was that I couldn't be fully devoted to the kids because I have thousands of things to do during the day. I can't come in to visit Miss Moon or lesson plan properly. Like, I would be working like at really late trying to make projects for the kids last year, and this year with the amount of time I had, it was a lot. It was very beneficial. So the kind of schedule that we went for was, there was times where me and Ms. Warsi would work together to look for a place where I was free and she was free. And a lot of the whole Hilltop thing is working with your mentor, but when the mentor's part of the class, made it very, very easy. So Monday and Tuesday would kind of just be lesson plans for me. Ms. Bawarsi and I would communicate, talk about what things we might want to do, what we would want to teach them. I wish it was in person, because there's a lot of things like experiments that we just were not possible because of COVID, and I just wasn't at school. And then Wednesday at 12:30 to 1:10 p.m. were our class times, and I'm gonna go delve deeper in that later. But a lot of what I kind of worked with the kids I would try to do a lot of experiential learning where I'm not just preaching to them, but I would implement that at the beginning. Kind of like all of our classes here at EA, where you start with a slideshow, and then at the end the kids work on their own, with us there obviously. And then Thursday would be another class time in the morning, and then Ms. Warsi and I, when she had time, we would kind of debrief what happened, what funny things the kids said, and then on Friday we kind of review that stuff, and then if we had to work the next week, which often happened, when you have 10 third graders on Zoom, they didn't always finish their work. But as you guys can see, this is Jack. A lot of I wish I learned it earlier, but a lot of the things I learned about the kids was like how much art means to them. Like a lot of the things that I would teach them in the beginning were more like writing and like, because we couldn't go outside. And later on I learned that like just how much they learned from literally just drawing and coloring and stuff like that. So like I said, I would kind of start a lot of my presentations like this with a kind of an overarching idea. So this is one of the projects we did. I'm going to show around maybe 3. And it's actually pretty cool because during my enviro class this year, we kind of covered some of this stuff at the beginning of the year, so it kind of giving them a head start. But this is an example of what we would do. So if you guys notice, every slide I give usually has a question following it. It's really hard to gauge really hard to see how engaged the children are without them responding to. So I really try to ask questions. Obviously, they probably didn't know what most of them were. Just the fact that they're thinking about it and they're showing me that they're paying attention. So I'd usually give like a big explanation about something, and then followed by usually a kid giving a personal anecdote that didn't mean anything to the class, but they still were very interested, and this is kind of the way I gauged it. Unfortunately, I couldn't get a hold of their projects because they did take it home and we just weren't in person. But this is one of my favorite ones. So I kind of taught them each about the 6 ecosystems, the main ecosystems in biomes, and then we had them choose their favorite ones. Most of them wanted to do tropical forest. They liked marine ecosystems, and I basically had them draw like the whole scene out. It was so hard to do, but I think most of them got it done. And then I also, within these big overarching ideas, I was kind of teaching smaller things. For example, I taught them about like the food chain and like the hierarchy of like a primary consumer, secondary consumer. And it seems like they got it just from the drawing, which is super awesome to me. And yeah, and it would probably take we'd usually start on Wednesday with like a lesson, and then on Thursday would probably be followed by the majority of the work time. This next one is another favorite, carbon footprint activity. Everyone knows what the carbon footprint is, what it means to conservation and sustainability. It's probably one of the more engaging things that you can do with the kids because it is just basically, they trace their foot. I'll show you guys what. So this was kind of like, at the end of each lesson, I would give them a instruction of what to do next. So if we're going to do a project or if they're going to write in a journal, I would kind of give them something where they can follow it. This is probably one of the more simpler ones. They would just trace their foot, and then they wrote down how, like, examples of how they leave their carbon footprint, and then also as well as solutions. And it seems like a lot of them got it. Like last year we covered like recycling a lot, and then it was really cool to see that they retained that knowledge over a whole year. Yeah. So, I was going to give you guys. And then one of my favorite activities over the year was like when I was younger and even during like my freshman year and my sophomore year when I was doing programs, a lot of what they preach is a lot of journaling. I found that on the trips where I didn't journal, I didn't get as much out of it. And what was really cool is at a program called High School Lake Ecology with a Shed Aquarium, they gave us these field books that were waterproof. So you could like write in they're called Write in the Rains, and you could journal in the rain, you could journal in the lake, you could journal like while we're hiking. And to me that was, as a high schooler, that was super engaging, so I thought that it probably worked with the lower school students. So during that winter break, I
Thank you.
during the winter break, I didn't want them to lose 2 weeks of kind of what we built up that first 3 weeks. So I gave them this prompt. It's kind of hard to require work from I don't know how old, third graders, because it's just a lot of work for them. But so we made it like not required, but semi-required. So they had to get done with one prompt a day, and they had to journal at least 5 times. So I figured every other day they could just squeeze one in, or their parents would help them. One of the things I emphasized, if you guys can see, I really wanted them to do this outside. I didn't want them to be locked in their rooms for 2 weeks, and I wanted them to be out in nature, and kind of what I did as a kid. Probably the best one that got the most responses was number 1. Maybe it's just because it's the first one, that's the first one they did. But I kind of asked them to write down what they saw, what they heard, what they smelled, and what they felt in that 15 to 30 minutes outside. And it was really interesting to me because like you could see the differences of where the kids are thinking. Like if they didn't do it, you could kind of tell like they're just saying whatever. And then some of the kids who were really, really engaged, like this kid named Hudson, he's very, very intelligent and works super hard. His answers were very, very detailed. So it was really, really cool to see, because that's kind of reminded me of what I did when I was younger. Finally, I know it might sound cheesy, but like it's kind of like the perfect case study of what like is possible for the future. And like I'm only one human being, if like schools can implement this with working with their kids, I saw a lot of improvement and a lot of engaged minds. So I don't think it's too late, and I don't think it's a lost cause. So yes, thank you guys for listening, and do you guys have any questions?
So was this Borsi your main mentor?
Yes.
And so it sounds like you kind of showed earlier that you all would collaborate on
Yep.
essentially a weekly basis, right?
Yes.
More
Yeah,
frequently
and
than that.
almost daily when it was super busy.
Yeah.
On like Wednesday and Thursday we were talking, just because she had to let me into the Zoom room anyway. So yeah. Any other questions? I know you guys have like rubric questions you guys have to ask. Just fire away.
I don't have a rubric question, but
Yeah.
I have a different question, if that's okay.
Yeah, that's fine.
So it's, so your assessment is that it's not a lost cause?
No.
So why not?
I think that, it's like I said before, it's very hard to make people care about the environment when it comes to like their location. And I was very lucky as a kid for my parents to like want me to like travel and stuff like that. And I know that's not possible. I know that's just not possible for some kids. And in that short time, and it's been about a year and a half of working with them in this way, I could actually see them very engaged, and like I think they just think differently when it comes to the environment. I remember my favorite part of last year, and kind of why it sucks being on Zoom, was like when I would come visit them at lunch, when we'd get lunch over there, they would always come up to me and tell me something that they saw.
Yeah.
One of my favorite things, also, like when they were waiting in the car lines, I'd usually ask them like, do they remember anything? Kind of just checking it, and most of them did remember that. So it kind of gives me hope, where it's like it's very possible for people to still learn and love the environment, even though they're 1,000 miles away from it.
Yeah, because it feels to me, this is fascinating. Thank you for letting me watch. It feels to me like one question you answered is, how do you encourage people to care about something or to see something that they're not
Yeah.
ordinarily
Accustomed.
able to see
Yeah.
on a daily basis,
Mhm.
right? Not everybody has the experience you had with your family.
Yeah.
And how you found a way to get these young kids to focus on something that they may or may
Yeah.
not
Yeah.
have focused on. So that sounds like it's pretty key, right?
Mhm. Yes.
That's the success in this,
Yes,
right?
yeah. And you know, when we were picking out Hilltop questions, I think last year mine was very specific. I mean, Miss CT wanted me to be a lot more big picture, because there are like a lot of aspects that come with researching it, and I can't just teach a class. That can't just
Right,
be what.
right.
But yeah, I do agree with you. That was when I was kind of reflecting on it. That's pretty much what I got out of it. And I hope that someone does this in the future with the kids, because like I've gotten so much out of that when I was younger.
So how interested are you in being a politician?
Not very interested.
How come?
I don't know. Couldn't tell you, but it's never really piqued my interest.
Well, you are in my mind, you are answering a question that more leaders ought to ask, which is, how do you get people to see something that they don't see every day?
Mm-hmm. And I think that would be literally just throwing them into that. And I think some of the days that I would teach the kids it wasn't all just lectures about like the solutions to climate change. I think one of our last days was I just taught them about like sharks, because that's what they wanted to learn about.
Mhm.
And those were kind of my favorite lessons, because I would, in Miss Moon's class, closer to the end of the year, but obviously with Corona it kind of halted it, but I would give them post-it notes where they could write down like 3 things they want to learn, and then I try to incorporate it. This year was super hard. Like I remember like when I got the list, it was like butterflies, monkeys, and like sharks. I'm like, I can't link those three things together. So yeah, one of my favorite activities was literally just telling them about like 7 different sharks, and then them like screaming at like pictures. It was awesome. And another thing was I found was super effective in like kind of getting them to like understand things. I would show them my own pictures from things that I've done, and not just because I want to feel cool, but like the fact that they were like way more engaged. Like I remember after I came home from Belize, I made a point to kind of talk about that, and they still remember the lionfish that we talked about that whole presentation, which is really, really cool.
So I know this is very near and dear,
Yeah.
for you. It means so much for you. Other than the topic, the whole Hilltop process, you think it was very worth having this chance to pursue this, rather than doing a
Yep,
course?
100%. When I was writing or thinking about topics for writing essays for college, I remember Ms. Jaworski read some of them, but my UC Santa Cruz application, that was a whole pain, but it was like 4 different essays you had to write. And when I was thinking about it, I was like, oh, I'm definitely going to write about the boat. I'm going to write about this trip. And the one thing that I really was able to connect with when I was thinking about it was this project. I think because it is such a long, not even a long process, just it is very involved. And I think just seeing the kids every day really made it more valuable. And I was surprised by that. Like, when I was thinking about what I was going to write, I was like, there's no way. There's other things that are more important to me. That was very wrong. Especially, I was writing at the time we were doing the journals and stuff, which is really cool.
My question for you is, with the research background you've had, between the boats and shed and everything else, after this now, as you picture yourself in 10 years, do you picture yourself doing the research, or do you picture yourself more on the education side?
Yeah, that's a great question. It's kind of a question my brother's reaching right now. And, I think as much as I do love being outdoors and stuff like that, I think sorry, I said that wrong. I think I enjoy being outside more than I do, like, being in the lab 24/7. And I think eventually I would love to do the more education stuff. I just love talking to people. So yeah, that is a question I'm going to have to answer in the next few years. kind of going into environmental science and business kind of hopefully will help me decide that. But yeah, that's a question for maybe 4 years from now.
No, I totally get it.
Yeah.
I mean, and you can do, there are ways to do both too, but,
That's a great
it's
question.
interesting, 'cause it is a shift, I think,
Yes,
that a
yeah.
little bit they.
Yeah, and I'm seeing it with my brother right now. Like
Yeah.
he's definitely, he's been more on the research side, but he just loves doing this stuff too. So
Scientists need people who can help them communicate, because
Yes.
just because you're a good scientist does not mean you're a good communicator.
I appreciate that when you had the top 20 up there,
yeah,
you know, so you looked at these different solutions, but you actually engaged one of them in some way. I think one of them was, educate and empower women.
yes, I can talk to you about that.
And the path you chose was educating and empowering
Yes,
young people.
yes.
children.
That's a great point. So when I was during that, it's called Environmental Entrepreneurship Program with Dartmouth. It was over the summer last year. I was super surprised by that. Like, I was just the way you guys thought too. I was like, oh, half of them have to be solar, wind, tidal, all that stuff. It's really not. Like, I think a massive problem that needs to be addressed is like the overpopulation issue that almost every country is facing now. We just talked about it in environmental science. It's a lot of what I think the people in America think of is we are thinking in a very very narrow mindset. And there's countries like India where women are being forced to have 7, 8 kids because they're not having a son. And it not only is it horrible to the women, it's also horrible for the planet. You're gonna, and you know, I saw this, like, we have, I kind of grew up going to this island called Sibuyan in the Philippines. It's a really remote island. We have like a farm there. My grandfather has one. And you know, I was actually amazed when I was like growing, like as I got older and I was looking back at it. I was always like wondering, these people are so poor, yet they have 10 kids. Right? That just doesn't make sense to me. And kind of the way my family explained it to me is like, when you're very poor and you're still in that mindset, you're still like farmers basically. The whole idea is that you need more people to work on your farm. You need more people to work for you. But when you don't have any food to give the kids, like it just doesn't work. And then when one dies because of like a very high infant mortality rate, you're just gonna have another one. Oh, I need another son. I need a son to carry on my legacy. So it's super interesting. I was super surprised when I saw like, oh, why would we have to empower the people? And I was like, okay, we're in America, you know, and even still in America we need to do that. Yeah, I thought that was super interesting. Other questions?
Just a comment. One of the things I loved about having you in the room with the kids was that you talked to them the same way I talked to them, was like small adults. So nothing was made simple or playful or silly. It was, these are the things that, you know, we are charged with as humans here on Earth, and they kind of took that charge and ran with it. So I appreciate how you always treated them like mini adults in the room.
And I think my first experience was that when actually our first lesson, I kind of talked to them about the solutions to reversing climate change, and I realized it was probably way too much work for a 3rd grader. Like I basically had like a psych lecture with them, and I love the psych lectures, but I don't think it was made for the 3rd graders, and I had them like write down. It was really cool. Some of them really took it like very creatively, and others, their parents probably just did it for them. But I just kind of had them research and then like write down, like I think I kind of just explain what the solution does, how it helps the environment, and then just one fun fact. And some kids had like a paper, and then some kids had like a board. I remember Tori had that super nice whiteboard. So yeah, I kind of learned that there's a balance between like treating them as children, but also I still have a job to do that. So.
I like your comment about fielding anecdotes that really have nothing to do
Yeah.
with it. That's the talent that more school teachers
Yes.
have.
Yeah,
That's what the whole day is, and they know how to craft that
Yeah.
into a cohesive.
I don't know, I hear some of your classes, I'm not exactly sure
And
it's restricted to our 3rd grade.
You actually reminded me when I was like doing it, I was like, I have so much more respect for like the teachers, and I mean not just the lower school teachers, just in general. Like, obviously I still had work to do, but like doing like a calc test, and then I also have to do like plan this whole like make this whole presentation and then like look at the stuff they did. So yeah, it was definitely an experience. But, yeah. Thank you guys.
All right.
Yeah, thank you, that was great.
Thank you.
Thanks.
I think anybody who wants to fill out a form and leave it for the CT to do.
Thank you.
Thank you.
That's great. Good job. Thank you thanks for having me.
Yeah, of course.
That's for Sammy. He's a teacher. Somebody left a,
Thank you for coming.
Oh, yeah, you're welcome. You have a plan and reviews it for us? Do this really quick, that's good.
Thank you guys for coming. I know you guys weren't.
Oh, thank you.
Oh, that was good.
Sam, I've been to a lot of these over the past few years, and this is excellent.
Thank you. Thank you.
Great job.
Yeah, I'll be after this.
Do you take these?
I think you just put them.
It's not us today,
I think on top. I think you. Thank you for coming, Miss Saul.
No, absolutely. Sometimes like, I need to sign up for it, and then I
I waited like all year.
forgot about it.